So you guys all know there's been a raging Republican civil war for a while now, and it's been on multiple fronts. So for a while you had the Trump wing versus the DeSantis wing, and there was a big split for online folks and for political pundits. There were many who were very pro-DeSantis, many who were very pro-Trump. It looks like Trump has a colossal edge in the primary, so that sort of died down a little bit. You also had in conservative media, Ben Shapiro versus Steven Crowder. There was a big fight that flared up there too, but it looks like Steven Crowder self-destructed and imploded by virtue of the fact he has the most ridiculous past you've ever heard of, where he loves to put his cock and balls on random people's shoulders and flash his junk. So anyway, he sort of fell off the map as a result of all that. But the raging civil war continues in the halls of Congress because you had, of course, Matt Gaetz and his gaggle of 8 idiots who decided to throw a hand grenade right in the middle of the Republican caucus, and they knocked out McCarthy as Speaker. Now, remember, it was something like 97% of House Republicans still backed McCarthy and supported McCarthy, but Matt Gaetz was very loud and obnoxious, and they were able to get him out because of that provision where, it didn't take many votes to get rid of McCarthy because they had such a slim majority in the House. And so, look, a lot of people on the left pointed out, hey, look, he's fighting, and that's what we want the left to do. And sure, that's true, but the problem with Gaetz is that the causes he was fighting for were really stupid. Like, if you looked at his areas of disagreement with McCarthy, he was basically like, you're not being draconian or right-wing enough. So he wanted more cuts to Meals on Wheels and the Head Start program and all these different things. And he doesn't want to compromise at all with Biden. Well, what McCarthy understood that Gaetz didn't is that the Democrats hold the Senate and Joe Biden is the president. So whatever sort of virtue signal bill you want to pass is going to die immediately. Why are we wasting our time here? But look, I say all that, but I support Gaetz with what he's doing because he's tearing the Republicans apart from within, right? And so all systems go, big fella. We love it. So anyway, it was a mess to try to get a new speaker. And first they said, we're going to go with Scalise. Didn't have the votes. Then they said Jordan. Didn't have the votes. Then they said Tom Emmer. Didn't have the votes. Then they said, well, maybe McCarthy with Jordan as his assistant speaker, have some sort of compromise deal. That didn't work. Then finally they landed on this guy, Mike Johnson, who's just a totally AI-generated Republican. He is total goofball. Insanely far right-wing views. He thinks gay sex should be criminalized, even in the privacy of your own home. He thinks that abortion doctors should spend time at forced labor camps. Crazy guy, right? Well, guess what? Gaetz, of course, is doing his victory lap. They call him MAGA Mike. We got MAGA Mike as our leader now. Okay, well, MAGA Mike is about to be disliked by the entire Republican caucus in about 7.5 minutes. The second any issue arises and he can't bridge the divide between the psychos and the bigger psychos, he's going to be the one with the target on his back. Anyway, Bill O'Reilly goes on Newsmax on Eric Bolling's show. These are 2 former Fox News hosts. And you are perfectly going to see here the divide between the Gaetz wing, represented by Bolling, and the McCarthy wing, represented by Bill O'Reilly. And they have, honestly, this is an adorable fight. I thoroughly enjoyed it. They're very smug and condescending to each other. And at one point, O'Reilly says something like, look, I'll explain slowly so even you can get it, Bolling. This is fun. Let's see what they fight over.
You don't like this idea. You don't like this idea of bouncing McCarthy and bringing in this very conservative Mike Johnson.
Look, I don't know Johnson. I don't know what he's going to do, but I didn't think McCarthy did a bad job. I think Gaetz is an ideologue and he's a self-promoter, and 8 Republicans in the House out of 220 got the speaker canned. I mean, that doesn't sound like a good strategy to me. In the process, embarrass the Republican Party in a time when we need that party to stand up against the insanity that we're looking at from the Democrats and Joe Biden. We don't need a weak, divided Republican Party. Gaetz is not a big picture guy. I am. He's free to believe whatever he wants to believe, but if Matt Gaetz were in charge of the Republican Party, believe me, nothing would ever get done.
Ooh. So look, I think that point is undeniably true. Gaetz talks a big game, but if he was the leader and he was responsible for bringing in the different wings of the Republican Party and cutting deals that can get through the Senate and with President Biden, He wouldn't get it. He would have done the exact same thing McCarthy did every step of the way. The exact same thing McCarthy did. So Bill O'Reilly's the old school Republican here. And his point is like, look, you idiots are fighting amongst yourselves. You don't really disagree on all that much. You really don't. And so focus on who the real enemy is, which is Biden and the Democrats. This is the old school Republican view. Watch. Eric Bolling comes in. He's not buying it.
If the Democrats held the Senate and the presidency, nothing across the board. Man will not compromise. And, he's gloating now. I don't know what you're gloating about. I thought McCarthy ran the show pretty well. We'll see if Johnson is super
do
good.
You, Bill? Do you? So you see this. So Bill and I see eye to eye on so many things, and I completely back the 8 people who stood up for the principles, who wanted to cut spending,
let me ask you
who wanted to not throw trillions of dollars at Biden's ridiculous spending sprees, and said, enough is enough. McCarthy, you're a rhino. You're an old school. Bill, I can't believe you're saying you back the rhinos.
No, that means if by that logic, all right, 213 members of the Republican House are rhinos because they voted to keep McCarthy.
Ooh. Look, he's right. Again, O'Reilly's actually correct here. So if you believe that, Eric Bolling and Matt Gaetz, then you're saying 230, you're saying 97% of House Republicans are rhinos. Do you actually believe that? Do you actually believe that? Now, maybe they say yes. I think what's much more likely is Gaetz knows there's not that much of an ideological difference between him and McCarthy, but Gaetz is trying to virtue signal and be a purity tester and self-promote. That is what it is. And O'Reilly's spot on that point.
So are they all insane? I mean, is that what you're telling me? Look, you govern by working with the opposition. That's the way the Constitution was set up by the Founding Fathers. You don't walk in there and say, I want this, I want that, when you don't have the votes to get it.
This is so, he's saying the most basic things, but Bolling's going to disagree and Matt Gaetz disagrees. Look, just to give an example. So, Matt Gaetz, they got one of his bills they had a vote on in the House, one of his budgets they had a vote on in the House, and it didn't even get through the House. Right? But it would have died in the Senate anyway. It definitely would have been vetoed by Biden and the chance it got through the Senate, which it wouldn't have gotten through the Senate anyway. But his bill had bigger cuts to Meals on Wheels, bigger cuts to the WIC program, which is a baby formula for babies. It had bigger cuts across the board, up to 70% cuts for some of these programs. Just absolutely sliced the budget thin, right? And so what? He's mad at McCarthy because he wasn't able to get that through, but there's nothing McCarthy could have done to get that through. They don't have any of the Democratic votes, and some of the moderate Republicans from swing districts weren't going to vote for it. So McCarthy's point is hey, asshole, step back, let me get whatever cuts I can get negotiating with Biden. You want a 70% cut in a various program. What if I can get you a 3% cut? He's like, no, you're a rhino and a sellout. But yeah, somebody like Joe Biden, who's a very conservative Democrat, he maybe would agree to a 3% cut or a 2% cut or a 1% cut of these various programs, and that's better than no cut, right? And Gaetz would not let them work and let them actually get something that Republicans could say at least is some semblance of a win. So instead, what happens? Gaetz blows up the whole thing, and they get nothing for the Republican side, which again, I like, but that's because I'm not a Republican and I'm not a conservative. He made it so that the continuing resolution, which went on for, it was a 45-day continuing resolution. What do we get? Spending levels exactly the same. 0 cuts to Meals on Wheels and all these other, programs that I think are good programs. But if McCarthy was given the leeway from Gaetz, maybe he would have gotten a 2% cut or a 3% cut. Gaetz doesn't understand this, or he doesn't care because he's simply a self-promoter and a virtue signaler, right? And so here's O'Reilly pointing out the obvious, and Bolling's too fucking stupid. He's too much of a meathead for him to get it through his brain.
And that you don't have the
Bill, the process worked. I mean, granted, the timing was awful because they bounced McCarthy and then Hamas attacked Israel. Bad timing, but the
you don't know if the
worked.
Process
we ended
worked
up
or not.
with well, I can tell you that Mike Johnson's is far more conservative than Kevin McCarthy ever was or will be.
And now he's going to act exactly like McCarthy was acting. This is what these people don't get. Mike Johnson can pass virtue signal bills all day long. Hell, maybe he could even, in some miraculous turn of events from his perspective, find a way. I'm going to pass a bill that bans gay sex again, even though the Supreme Court overturned it. I'm going to pass a bill that overturns the gay marriage bill that recently passed. I'm going to pass a bill to cut Meals on Wheels 80%. But that would all die in the Senate, and that would, or get vetoed by President Biden. None of that stuff would get through. So he's going to have to act exactly like McCarthy was acting to get anything done at all. And then you guys are going to turn around and call him a rhino and a sellout. Why? Because you're dumb. Because you're idiots. Now, look, the dynamic is a little different on the Democratic side, right? Because the progressive wing of the Democratic Party never fights for anything, right? So what should they do? Fight, but be strategic and intelligent and get the wins you can get. Right? So the Democrats have a different problem. They actually do need to fight more on some issues. The Republicans have the exact opposite problem. They object before they even know what they're objecting to. They fight before they even know what they're fighting about. Everybody's a rhino. Everybody's a sellout. Nobody's pure enough. And then watch, this guy Mike Johnson's going to act just like McCarthy. No doubt about it, because he has to. He's got all these constraints and these pressures, and he's got a Democratic Senate and a Democratic president.
I know that much.
Well, what difference does that make? These parties are supposed to be problem solving, not being ideological. Ideology doesn't get this country anywhere. Ideology doesn't solve problems. It doesn't. So we have massive runaway government spending. Biden doesn't care. He'll be dead by the time the economy collapses from it.
I'm not sure McCarthy did either. I'm not sure McCarthy did either. I don't see any. I didn't see. I never saw anything.
It's McCarthy a matter of getting. Really, look. I'll make this point again, and I'll slow it down so you understand it, Bolling.
He's never changed. O'Reilly has never changed.
We get nothing done if he were Speaker of the House.
Facts.
Nothing.
True.
Nothing. He'd run around saying, yes, and nothing would change because Americans don't want strident ideology. Now, there are a lot of them in that category, but you've got to come together to solve the problems. And Gates can't solve anything. He's too extreme. Look, he's entitled to his point of view. The people in his district elect him, and that's fine. But if you're telling me that he's going to go in and solve vexing problems, you're wrong, Bolling. He's not. Now, I don't know about Johnson. I'll give Johnson a try. But based upon what I know, the dynamics in the Senate and the House, McCarthy did the best job he could do, and 213 Republicans agree with me.
We'll come back in a few months and take a look back and see how Johnson did, and we'll check the scorecard.
That was fun. I love it when these guys fight. Yeah, by the way, this Republican Civil War is not over. Just because this guy is Speaker now? No, now everybody's going to start hating him, right? Maybe there is a chance Gates was humbled enough where this was kind of embarrassing for him when Republicans couldn't pick a freaking speaker and he initiated the whole process that got him there. Maybe it was embarrassing enough where he's going to tone it down a little bit now and give Mike Johnson more leeway. But at the end of the day, what will happen is Mike Johnson will act like Kevin McCarthy acted. In the same way, John Boehner got a whole bunch of shit from the Tea Partiers back when he was Speaker. You know, Eric Cantor and all the other guys. And they hated him. But he kind of agreed with them ideologically. Yeah, they were more extreme, but Boehner was getting whatever was gettable in his negotiations with Obama. And they were like, nope, not enough. Okay, well, when that backfires on you, that's great. And I sincerely mean that because I like it when it backfires on Republicans because that means more Democratic wins. That means fewer cuts to these programs. So anyway, O'Reilly's 100% right. Bolling's a total jackass, and this shouldn't surprise any of you. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.